It is not important, but try to do like or dislike the video. At the start of film, Frank was telling us about his two favorite moments in his life, once when he married, and again when he assisted a police officer in apprehending a thief. Frank endured many torments, rejections, and raggings throughout his life. He sketches his best moments. He hung them on the wall of his room. He used to see them daily in the morning. From them he gets the motivation of life. A few months pass from Frank's marriage. Frank notices his wife is moving far from him. His wife has developed a drug problem. Frank wants to end her friends to save his wife from drugs. Frank has no courage. He can only see his wife in this condition. He couldn't do anything. Frank was making breakfast for him one day. A drug dealer named Jack comes to his home. He asks him about his wife. Frank's wife wasn't at home at that time. The drug dealer had breakfast with Frank and tells him, "Tell your wife I came to meet her." Frank understands after hearing that there is something fishy, but he couldn't do anything. His wife leaves him after some days. Frank becomes depressed because of it. Frank goes to Jack's club in search of his wife. He asks Jack about his wife. Jack tells him, "Your wife doesn't want to live with you." Frank understands that his wife is with Jack while leaving him. Frank becomes sad. Frank goes into depression. He wasn't doing his work properly, and Frank's friend says, "You have to forget your wife. You have to take a new start to your life." Frank loves his wife a lot. He doesn't want to lose her. He wanted to get her back. He goes to the police station to report his wife's disappearance. The police officer couldn't do anything because Frank lacks evidence of a kidnapping. His wife moved with Jack with her will. Frank returns home being disappointed. He starts watching TV returning home. Meanwhile, he sees a TV show, Holly Avengers, in which a superhero motivates the people to fight for truth instead of bending in front of evil. Frank also gets motivated and goes to bring his wife back from Jack. Frank tries to take his wife back. His wife refuses to go with him. Frank tries to persuade her to agree. On it, Jack's companions beat him. Frank lays on his bed returning home and notices the superhero of Holly Avengers outside his house. When Frank goes to see him, the superhero disappears. Later, Frank discovers a white light in his house. Then many tentacles hold him by the four sides. Frank couldn't understand what is happening to him. Meanwhile, a tentacle cuts his head. It opens his brain. A huge finger appears from the white light. It touches Frank's brain, and after this, Frank finds himself in a white light place. The superhero of the Holly Avengers was in front of him. He tells Frank, "God's finger has touched your brain. God has a plan for you. God has chosen you for the plan." Frank notices the superhero's mask. In the next scene, Frank finds himself on the bed. He was normal but believed that God has chosen him to be the superhero. He goes to a comic book center and purchases a Holly Avengers book. The bookstore's owner Libby reads the first page of the book. It was written, "No superpower is needed for the superhero. There should be the courage to fight against evil." Understanding this, Frank goes home and designs a superhero costume for him. Frank decides to fight against evil and will stop crimes. Frank goes to the drug dealer's place. The drug dealer was about to sell the drug to two boys. Frank arrives and assaults the drug dealer. After some time, two people of him arrive. Frank runs from there due to it. He again goes to the comic book store. He also wanted to have his own weapon like other superheroes. Libby asks about this from Frank and he says, "I am making my own superhero. For him, I want a weapon." Frank selects the pipe wrench as his weapon. He ends the people who do crimes and the drug dealers. He declares in the public whoever will do these evil tasks, he will teach them a lesson. In the next scene, Frank was outside Jack's club. He notices his wife with Jack's friend. He was taking his wife somewhere while giving her drugs. Frank chases their car and sees them going into a farmhouse. Frank was also famous in the news as well. None knows his real purpose. They all call him Psycho. The next day, Frank was in a lane to purchase the cinema ticket. Meanwhile, a man tries to move into the lane. Frank forbids him from doing this. The man abuses Frank and says ill about him. Frank becomes annoyed by this. Frank goes home and returns while wearing his superhero uniform. With the pipe wrench, Frank injures the man. He runs from there after doing this. The next day, when Frank was at his job, Libby arrives. She has a newspaper in her hand and there was news about superheroes. Libby was thinking the superhero is Frank. Frank tells a lie and clearly refuses. That he is not me. Libby says, and that he is doing good regardless of who he is. Then Frank goes to his home, but he was confused. He thinks, am I doing right or not? He prays to God, if I am doing right and I have to keep my superhero character alive, give me any clue. But Frank doesn't get any clue from God. He throws his superhero costume into the dustbin. He thinks maybe God doesn't want this, that he will become the superhero. He again sees the Holly Avengers. The superhero says, if God has assigned you something, so you shouldn't leave the task. Frank takes his costume from the dustbin and goes to Jack's farmhouse wearing it. He notices there Jack with his friends were giving drugs to his wife. Frank's wife gets faint due to the drugs. Frank was seeing all this. Frank sees Jack and his friends as they are demons. Meanwhile, Frank comes in front of the superhero's getup. Jack's people recognized him and take out their guns. Frank flees from there. Jack's companions were also behind him. Frank somehow comes to the main gate while escaping. Meanwhile, Jack's friend shoots a bullet at his foot. Somehow Frank succeeds in escaping from there in his car. He was feeling pain due to the bullet in his foot. He can't go to the hospital in this situation. He decides to go to Libby. Today Libby has arranged a party at her house. Frank goes inside while wrapping the plastic sheet on him, so none will notice him in the superhero costume. Later, he says to Libby, I want to tell you something important. Libby takes Frank to her room. Libby gets shocked seeing that Frank is the superhero. When Libby discovers there is a bullet shot in Frank's foot, she sends her friends back. She starts curing Frank's wound. On another side, when the police officer sees Frank's picture, he recognizes that none other than Frank is a superhero. He goes to Frank's house to arrest him, but Frank wasn't there. Meanwhile, Jack's people also arrive. They shoot at the police officer while considering him Frank. After knowing that he is not Frank, Jack's friend becomes furious. Frank is shown who is still with Libby. Here, Libby says, I want to be your sidekick. Frank refuses her for this. Libby requests him while wearing the costume. That is why, in the end, Frank must agree with her. They go to a location to stop the criminals. After a long time, there was no crime. Libby tells Frank about a boy who got into an accident in her friend's car. They go to that boy's home. They were beating him. Libby was about to end the boy being furious. Frank stops her at the exact time. He scolds Libby for this, because he doesn't want to end people but wants to help them. He wants to teach them a lesson. He forbids Libby from working for him. Frank stops at a gas station on the way. Meanwhile, Jack's friends see him. Noticing them, Frank tries to run from there in his car. They hold and hit him. Frank somehow runs from there while wearing his superhero mask. But going at a far distance, they again hold him. They were beating him. After it, Jack's man was about to shoot at Frank. Libby brings the car and hits him with the wall. During this, Frank picks up the gun and shoots the other man of Jack. The man was stuck between the car and the wall. His condition was also worse. Libby says, whoever will tease the superhero and sidekick, he will face this situation. All the people get panicked after seeing this. Frank leaves with Libby. After Libby saves Frank's life, he prepares to make her his sidekick. Libby asks Frank to make a relationship with her. Frank refuses her while saying, I am married and I love my wife a lot. Frank was about to face Jack to save his wife. He goes to purchase some important equipment and weapons with Libby. They purchase many bombs, guns, and many bulletproof jackets. When they returned home, they learned that everyone is rooting for the superhero. Because everyone knows the superhero is ending the ones who commit crimes. With it, Libby was also in news that she is helping the superhero. She becomes happy seeing this news. She tells Frank about this. In the next scene, Frank is shown sleeping. Libby arrives in her costume. This time, her behavior was strange. Frank has understood her intentions. Libby behaves weirdly with Frank. Frank vomits because of it when he goes to the washroom. He sees his wife's vision. After this, Frank goes to Jack's farmhouse with Libby. Jack's boss arrives there for the deal. They were sitting and seeing all this. Jack takes his boss inside when Jack's boss sees Frank's wife. He takes her with him. Frank's wife was thinking Jack will save her, but he sends Frank's wife with his boss. His boss starts misbehaving with Frank's wife. There were some people set by Jack to guard the farmhouse. One of the men was ended by Libby with her sharp weapon. Frank throws the other man on the petrol and later sets him on fire. Jack's man notices Libby, but she blasts him with a pipe bomb. Jack and his other companion become alert due to this voice coming out. They shoot at Frank and Libby. Frank was shot at his chest and was saved due to the bulletproof jacket. Libby was shot at her head, that's why she dies immediately. Frank becomes enraged as a result, and he moves forward while blasting them with a bomb. Seeing it, Jack's friend tells him the superhero is here. Jack's boss gets panicked and runs from there with his money. Jack tries to stop him, but he doesn't get agree. Later, Jack shoots at him and his man, because Jack wants to have his money. Jack was moving from there while taking his money. Frank arrives and shoots Jack's man. Then he starts fighting with Jack's friend, but Jack's friend was dominant on him. Frank gets a rod and attacks Jack's friend with it. Jack's friend falls down due to it. Frank hits his head with the floor several times. Due to it, he dies there. After it, Frank goes upstairs in search of his wife. Jack himself gives his wife to him. He asks him to leave. As Frank was taking his wife from there, Jack shoots at him. He says, "Your wife doesn't love you, she loves me." Frank didn't get any harm due to the bulletproof jacket. He shoots at Jack. Jack becomes furious because of it. He says Frank is a psycho killer. Frank yells, "Stop doing crime and getting benefits from us, and stop dealing drugs. After it, I will also stop killing you." Jack asks him, "What do you think this world will be changed after ending me?" On it, Frank says, "I will try." He stabs Jack and ends him. Frank's wife gets scared seeing this, but he returns home with his wife. He starts living with his wife. Frank notices his wife is still not happy with him. His assumption was correct, as his wife left him after a few days. His wife was now out of drug addiction, so she starts helping people like her. With her experience, she gets married and has 4 kids. They call Frank their uncle. Frank has made him realize that his ex-4 wife's children will change the world. Frank lives with his pet rabbit. He has filled his room's wall with his life's best moments. Frank has also included the highlights of his time with Libby. Aside from that, include photos of his ex-children, wives. In the end, he misses Libby while seeing her picture. He becomes emotional. This film comes to an end with this emotional scene.